Welcome back to ArdaCraft, everybody. I am joined once again by Fornad. Fornad, we are in a much more colorful, much more cheery place than Rohan. This is our third episode recorded back-to-back here from the wonderful ArdaCraft server. How are you doing, Fornad?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm great, and if you missed the first two, we're fortunate enough to be joined here by the owner and the founder of this great server, which if you can learn more about it from ardacraft.me, that'll be found in the description, and you can just walk around here yourself. Go check it out; it's super cool. Where are we today?
So today we are in the Shire. Specifically, we are in Hobbiton, very near to Bag End, so the place where Frodo and Bilbo lived in the Lord of the Rings, kind of. Home to both, indeed, The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. It's where you start. It's the real kind of emotional center of the story, and as such, we put a lot of work into making it as good as possible.
I would imagine this is probably one of your biggest tourist destinations from people just popping on the server.
Yeah, hugely. Like this is where our spawn is. So when people come in, they start off in where both the stories started, which is quite appropriate. And yeah, it is very important to when people come online, they want to see this place because it is so kind of nostalgic and so representative of the stories as a whole to them.
Mm-hmm.
So we put a lot of work in. So this is the front door of Bag End. You can see a little stool outside where Bilbo would sit with his pipe and look out for where Gandalf came up to him and started off that adventure all those years ago.
Yeah.
And now we are standing outside Bag End, where in our timeline Frodo lives now on his own as a kind of wealthy bachelor. So if we walk inside again,
those doors are so fancy. They're so fancy.
Awesome, aren't they?
That's so cool.
Yeah, so Hobbiton is actually one of these regions and one of these places that Tolkien actually did quite a few sketches of. So the layout going down to the river out there is based on a watercolor that he did. The front kind of porch area and of Bag End is, again, he sketched that out. He also sketched out this entrance hall that we're in now, or that you were in. It's all kind of been sketched and drawn out by Tolkien. So we kind of spent a lot of time making sure that we got as close as possible to his vision, that he not only described this place but he also actually put it to paper, and that really helped us in determining kind of the style and the look of Bag End.
Just in case for anyone who's not heard of ArdaCraft before, you guys are following the books. You're reproducing this world based on the books, not the movies, but you do take some inspiration from the movies. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. You hit the nail on the head there. So we enjoy the Peter Jackson movies on here. We think they're great, and we do take some visual inspiration from them. But essentially, we are about the books. We are about recreating the world of Tolkien, because I think for a couple of reasons really. One of them it is creative reason. Like from an artistic perspective, I think it's more interesting to create your own interpretation of words on a page, than it is to just recreate something that's already been done in a visual medium, i.e. a film.
Yeah, totally.
So that's more interesting. And then also, if you're going to say, right, I want to recreate Tolkien's world, I think it would be dishonest to say that and then to try and recreate it, a world from a film. That's
right.
Not, in many respects, isn't accurate to what Tolkien said about this world.
Right.
So,
and the films are there. You can go watch the films. They're there already. You guys, why do something that's already there? You guys are making something completely unique to itself. Yeah, super cool.
Exactly.
If you're wondering what the texture pack is, we covered this in the last episode, but just in case you pop in, this is the Conquest Reforged texture pack with an ArdaCraft kind of overlay for some custom paintings and stuff like that. There are a lot more rooms in Bag End than I ever really thought that there were.
Yeah, it's. I was going to say this is not representative of your average Hobbit hole. This is very much a rich. Frodo and Bilbo were both very well off. Bilbo sort of obviously was rich already, and then got even more money when he went on his little adventure to get some gold from the mountain. So yeah, these guys are really quite well off in the Shire, and maybe if we look at some other Hobbit holes later in the video, we can look at the kind of class distinction that there was in the Shire. So yeah, this is really like a mansion by their standards.
Oh wow, this is great. Is this one? Oh man, I love those doors.
They are nice. Yeah, cool. So we can go out and look at the sort of extensive gardens around Bag End. They're very nice as well. Yeah, just a lot of color, a lot of detail.
Yeah, that's great. That's just great. So this whole hill is Bag End, like.
So Bag End is the kind of topmost hole, you could say, up at the top where we just were, and then you have these 3 Hobbit holes down here along this street. This is called Bagshot Road, and this is where a few Hobbit families live. Essentially, they live in the. So when they excavated Bag End, obviously all the dirt was shot down. So if you understand Bagshot, it was dirt that was dug out, shot down the hill, and then they dug into the side of that and made these little Hobbit holes themselves, right? So these are families who kind of, at least on the far right, that's where I think that's where Samwise Gamgee lived with his family. So the blue door, I think, is where Sam and his dad and his mum and all of his siblings lived. So if you go in there, you'll see, instantly this is your more standard, Hobbit hole. So you can see instantly it's a little poorer. Yeah, it's a lot smaller.
I would say still, though, from a bit of a Lord of the Rings noob, if you will, still this is bigger than what I really kind of thought. I kind of was expecting, a bedroom, a kitchen, and maybe an all-purpose room, but that's still bigger.
Yeah, well, the thing about hobbits is they had very extensive families. You have to remember, right? So I can't remember how many siblings Sam had, but it was something like 5 or 6 or 7. A lot of a big family, right? So like they were small people, but they reproduced pretty extensively. So yeah,
very cool. And the amount of just nature and greenery and gardens built in this landscape, I need to do a lot more landscaping before I build more into the next parts of my worlds, because man, if the terrain is flat, you can't do a lot of this,
Yeah. No, it certainly adds a lot to the world if you're able to kind of add slopes and hills and kind of twisting roads to it. It just creates such an interesting landscape as a result. And then at the bottom of this valley, you've got a river running through, which is called the Water. Hobbits always inventive with their names. And then across here you have Hobbiton proper, so you have the real, the actual village, which kind of, if you look back, Bag End kind of dominates the skyline here, really.
Oh yeah. Well, I guess as it should from being the start of the 4 books too.
Absolutely. So yeah, let's look around Hobbiton and see again just the idyllic nature of it. And I think I may have mentioned in the last video, but this region is all inspired by kind of late 19th century England, where Tolkien grew up. So he grew up in Warwickshire and some areas around there, and kind of the memories of his childhood in that rural region is what really inspired the Shire in his mind. The people as well. If you read the books, the hobbits have a lot of traits of kind of country English people in both good and bad ways. So they're very family oriented, and they're very rural, and they're all about the land and farming and stuff. But in many ways, they're also quite small-minded, and they're not very mistrustful of strangers and foreigners, and also even people from different parts of the Shire. Sam is like all those weird people down in the Marish, in that flat area. They're all can't trust them. So there's that aspect of it as well. So the Shire is very reflective of what Tolkien could remember of his early childhood, before those regions of England were kind of taken over by industrialization, which is where you see the kind of anti-industrial or environmental messages that he has in his books. That's where that all stemmed from, because a lot of the places he remembered growing up were turned into factories or mills or whatever, and he kind of was always very depressed by that. So it's an interesting source of inspiration for him.
I did not know that Hobbiton had regular houses. I thought it was all Hobbit holes. I mean, I guess it's been it's been decades since I read the book, and so I'm just shocked to see, kind of standard regular houses there. It's really not what I
Yes,
expected.
it's actually a note that Tolkien made. There's a little chat. There's a little sort of prologue, I guess you could call it, to Lord of the Rings called Concerning Hobbits, and he talks about the hobbits, their history and their culture and all stuff. And one of the things he mentions is that Hobbit holes were their original method of dwelling, and that was their kind of oldest, most traditional way of living. But over time, they kind of developed architecture, which began as being very, very similar to their holes, long and low and covered with grass and quite comfortable. But over time, they developed tiling and thatching and stuff, which they learned a lot of time from men. So by the time of Lord of the Rings, really only the very richest hobbits and, funnily enough, the very poorest hobbits lived in hobbit holes. Everyone in between tended to live in houses.
I'm flying up above here, looking at all the crop fields. Oh man, I just finished what I would call a major set of crop fields in my single player world, and I just I felt really good about it like 3 hours ago, and now I'm looking at this like, oh crap, man, this is like it's so good. I'm taking the whole thing in, and again looking at this from sort of what can I do to improve my world, all that kind of stuff, and everything from like. You guys just nail it. You nail it so hard that I just can't even believe it. Like, even regardless of texture pack and of the way you can do roads with the layers and stuff, But regardless of that, just the way the trees go up above the road here, which obscures the view and just makes this whole thing feel. I mean, I actually feel in my office sitting here in my house. I feel cooler now because I feel like I'm in the shade with a nice little breeze. Which is ridiculous, but I kind of feel like it because you've made this place so immersive and it's so good. And then I thought, well, man, all these trees are sticking up here. So I thought, well, I bet they really paid attention to these trees along the road because that's what you see. And then if you go outside, probably not quite as much. Nope, you did it all around the fields and everything. It's just amazing. It's that
attention to detail everywhere, which means the projects take a lot of time, but when they are done, they're really worth exploring. And my original conception for this world, and it remains the same. When I started the server, was a player should be able to go in any direction they want, from spawn and find stuff and explore the world and see and find detail and look at places that probably very few other people have seen, probably since they were built. And that's the kind of conception I had to make it feel like a real living, breathing world, not just a corridor that you walk along and it's only detailed in that corridor. It's everywhere. It's the whole thing. I can see you're doing that right now. You're like, where's the end of the world? There must be a.
Yeah, I just wondered like where, like how. Okay, so I've always had a problem in Minecraft, world building wise, of how you end anything. Like anything, ending stuff is really hard, And so you have a bunch of crop fields here, right? Well, how do you end the crop field? So I was just kind of curious to like, how do you transition from a crop field into, regular terrain of whatever? And it's just interesting to see sort of how the trees go along here. And there's this little bush line, I guess. I guess that's just where.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really man, this stuff, it adds so much to the world. I'm really blown away from a world building standpoint. By I guess the little things, if you will, even though crop fields I guess are technically the big things, right? But like the not houses part, I'm just really blown away by it. It's really awesome.
Yeah. If we come a little bit east here, we'll have a look at Bywater, which is a settlement kind of near to Hobbiton. This big house here is Farmer Cotton's house.
Okay.
So again, so he was a character in Lord of the Rings. His daughter Rosie is the one who ends up marrying Sam at the end of the story.
Okay, yeah.
So they're kind of side characters in the book. But actually, funnily enough, Tolkien drew a sketch of what the inside should look like, and so we followed that to the letter, and kind of the outside he did a little sketch as well. So one of these areas again that Tolkien actually kind of had an idea for, and so we had to follow it, with a courtyard outside and all this stuff. And just down South Lane in Bywater, so a little lane that leads south out of the village and all this stuff. So again,
it's a really cool house too. Just a cool footprint. Yeah.
And we can't take credit for that one. That was actually Tolkien. So again, something he did.
What a mind.
I mean, just I'm still, even all these years later, I'm still blown away by. I still find new stuff. Like I still find new texts and new little scraps of information and lore that I didn't know. And he spent his whole life doing it, and it's incredible what he produced. But yeah, this is Bywater. It's particularly scenic, with a little pool and fishing pier and stuff. You can see Hobbit Holes just across the water there.
Oh yeah,
it's a particularly nice village. And I think we missed out. Actually, we missed out on the Green Dragon, which is just to the west here. If you follow, this is the famous pub, which famous drinking establishment amongst the hobbits. And you can see, so this is one of those transition buildings, right, between when they were living in Hobbit Holes and when they were living in houses. You can see the roof is made out of grass, so it's kind of like an extension of a Hobbit Hole, but it's built above ground, so it's that interesting transition from from Hobbit Holes to houses. That's
very cool. That's very, very, very cool. Also diagonal door too. That's fancy. Oh wow, this is cool. Seems like the roof is a little taller in this one, maybe.
Yeah, it's a quite a big location. It would be the hobbits would come here for big events and that kind of thing. So even Merry and Pippin, who lived in different parts of the Shire, were patrons of this particular establishment. So you'd have a lot of it was quite a famous in the Shire, the Green Dragon.
Yeah, I want to say this probably came from the movies, because I think my memory of the books now has gone from my head since I've had children. But at one point, I believe they talk about, Frodo, you're bigger than Bilbo, and the hobbits are growing essentially. Is that did I just make that up, or is that true?
No, you might be thinking of when Merry and Pippin go to Fangorn Forest and they drink this Ent draft that Treebeard gives them, and it makes them a little taller. It kind of makes them grow, makes their hair a bit thicker, and they come back to the Shire, and everyone's like, "Wow, these guys are a lot taller."
Oh, maybe that's what it was. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So it's not that hobbits are sort of, I don't know, evolving into bigger. It's just that they had some sort of magical concoction.
Exactly, yeah, and they come back and they're like, "Whoa, these guys are huge now." They're still like 4 foot tall, but right. for Hobbit, that's pretty tall. What I'll do now, actually, I don't know if you want to split the Shire up into 2 episodes. There's another little region I can show you, or
I think so. I think we're at a great stopping point right now. So why don't we wrap this one up? If you want to find out for yourself what this great server looks like, you can just go to ArdaCraft.me to go check it out. And there's a launcher. You just click on the launcher, and boom, you're in game almost instantly. It's super, super cool. And you can just walk around. If you want to apply to build here, you go to the website ArdaCraft.me, and there's some guidelines there, I believe, right, Ferdinand?
Yeah, that's absolutely it. Very easy to join. We have our own launcher. And once you join, you can look around. Everything's explained for you. We have a very helpful community of people who will be happy to take you around the world yourself.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for showing me around. We'll see you next episode for the Shire Part 2. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. And leave a like if you don't mind. That's always helpful. And I'll see you next time.